There were 3 that thought that was good. And the bill failed. 205 to 217. That was a close one. Voting yes were 111 Democrats and 94 Republicans. And opposed were 83 Democrats, 134 Republicans. Continuing resolution, October of last year. Anybody remember the government shutdown? Okay. This is the bill that reopened the government, and it funded the government fully, including funding Obamacare. And Obamacare is really going to hurt everybody. And, you know, if there's a little pain associated with defunding it, shutting down the government or whatever, it's well worth that short-term pain to avoid the long-term disaster that's going to be. So that funded the government through January of last month, or 15th of last month, and suspended the debt ceiling completely until this month. And then House and Senate had to go into a conference on a full-year budget, which, anybody hear of the omnibus budget bill? That's what it was. It allows for more uncontrolled spending and debt, no reforms to either, does nothing to address Obamacare, and potentially promises more future spending if a budget agreement is reached. And we'll see that in just a minute. Who was in favor of the continuing resolution? 3 Main Street Partnership congressmen, including Dave Joyce. Most of the Ohio Republican congressmen voted against that continuing resolution. Passed 285 to 144. That resolution was really popular among Democrats. All 198 that voted in favor of that continuing resolution. Most Republicans voted against it, but not all, because they needed some Republicans to pass that. Okay, so we jump forward to January 15th, and we come to the omnibus budget. That's the one that funds the federal government for the rest of this fiscal year. Spends $45 billion more than the budget caps established in 2011. Perpetuates the wasteful spending from previous years. And, you know, those congressmen that voted for this thing, they must have been up 24 hours a day reading that thing to find out what was in it, because it was over 1,500 pages and they had about 2 days to read it. So I'm sure, no. Do you really have to pass it to find out what's in it?
Yeah, that's right. You have to pass.
My position would be, if there's a 1,500-page bill, we need about 6 months to look at it and find out what's in it before we decide to vote on it. Now, I don't know how much this was known at the time that the bill was passed, but it does fund insurance plans that allow abortion as a covered service under Obamacare. Now, I don't know if that was known at the time, because they only had 2 days and it's over 1,500 pages. But if you don't read the bill, how can you know what's in it? And I think our representatives should be held responsible for knowing what's in a bill before they vote on it, don't you? Well, Dave Joyce voted for this omnibus budget, as did most of the Main Street Partnership folks. There were only only 3 of Ohio congressmen that voted against it. And the bill passed overwhelmingly, 359 to 67. Somehow there were 3 Democrats that voted against it. They must be running against a conservative Republican in their district, and maybe they have a tough district. There were only 64 Republicans that voted against it. So there were almost as many Republicans and Democrats that voted for that bill. Then the Farm Bill appears again, and this is just 3 weeks ago. This Farm Bill undoes some of the already modest reforms to crop insurance and food stamps that were previously in the bill. This is the bill that came out of the House and Senate Joint Committee. 5-year reauthorization of the Farm Bill will spend nearly $1 trillion over 10 years. Remains loaded with corporate welfare, special carve-outs for well-connected agricultural corporations, not the small farmers, mind you, but the agricultural corporations. Voting in favor of that, Congressman Dave Joyce, a number of others, including the contingent from Main Street Partnership. Voting no were the 3 that typically vote no against those things. So, passed 251 to 166. Again, another example. So what's the conclusion? Okay. I'm just presenting the facts. You guys draw the conclusion. But Dave Joyce associates with the Main Street Partnership, whose members are liberal to moderate Republicans. I suppose he could get out of that if he wanted to. He is supported by the Main Street Partnership, and LaTourette is the CEO and president of that organization. Dave Joyce was selected as LaTourette's successor, and I can't prove this, but I firmly believe that he was that hand-picked successor. And in FreedomWorks and Heritage Action scorecards, Dave Joyce ranks in the bottom 20% of Republican congressmen. So I think this paints the picture of who Dave Joyce really is. He may want to come back and portray himself as a conservative, and I have noticed since he got a primary challenger, he seems to have shifted a little bit to the right. So he may continue to do that through the primary, and after that, then I don't think it will have an influence on him for a while. So, with that said, I just wanted to present to you the information that maybe not everybody was aware of. Because I had heard some talk that, well, you know, Dave Joyce, he's okay. You know, what's wrong with Dave Joyce? Well, I think if you get to understand what groups he associates with, and who supports him, and why, and how he votes, then I think you come to a different conclusion. But I will leave that conclusion up to you. And so you can draw this conclusion if you want, but it's up to you. A couple of important quotes, and then we'll get to somebody really important. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on